February the 14th, 2016. You're looking at Earth-facing solar dynamics observatory images. In the top right quadrant of the sun, we've had a sunspot now that's become triple configurated as far as its magnetic types. It's beta, gamma, delta. Now, that means the chance of X flares has gone up from a 1 to a 5%. I know it doesn't sound that much, but solar activity's been minimum. There are two things that we need to be watching for. That if we had an X flare even in this location of the sun, we would be impacted because the first burst of energy from an X flare will hit the Earth in 8.2 minutes. If there's an associated coronal mass ejection, it would be less geo-effective or Earth-facing, but it would arrive 2 days later. Now, we've had a coronal mass ejection that left the solar surface in the late hours of the 11th, around 2200 hours on UTC time. Tonight, that coronal mass ejection is going to pass our planet. Now, this is what's called the GOES X-ray flux chart. We have not had any flares outside of small M's. You see that, C's and M's, but that could change, and that's why they've issued this watch. It's called Sunspot 2497. If you look at the chart on the NOAA predictions, it's saying that this sunspot is beta, gamma, delta, and that's the magnetic type. The Sunspot 2500 just below it is showing just a beta magnetic type. You see the difference? What's happened, NOAA Space Weather has changed the Class X chance from a 1 to a 5. It doesn't sound that much, but it does increase the possibilities, especially with that configuration. And we've seen in the past 3 or 4 years X flares that are on the very edge of the sun that are Earth effective. Now, it is interesting to note here that we're going into a solar minimum. We've seen that. But back in 2009, at the very bottom of this chart, you had 260 days without a sunspot. These are called spotless days, 71%. 2010, 51 days. 2011, only 2 days didn't see a spot. Then all the way to 2014, up till now, there was only 1 day in all those years, and that was in 2014, that was a spotless day. Doesn't mean they were large or X-flare capable, but that's unusual to see that many days in a row. But that may change as we go into the solar minimum, and we're breaking cold weather records in the Northeast. We talked about this 2 or 3 months ago, starting with the videos on the mini ice age. But this is a look at 2497 and 2500. You can see the difference in the size and the different colorations. But here is the coronal mass ejection coming up in the late hours of the 11th that leaves the solar surface, and it is Earth-facing. 11 at 2224 minutes. That's UTC time. So that would be, you go back about 5 hours, and you would have your East Coast time. Now, what's important is the arrival time, and we're going to look at both CME tracking models from Enlil. This is the first one named after the space god Enlil from Sumerian texts. But you see the timestamp at the top. We start to rise as far as plasma density on the Earth in the top chart and the right on the green line. Now here you can see the wave that has come off the sun, and that was the coronal mass ejection I showed you on LASCO C2. First you're going to go through this green wave, and that's part of the magnetic sheath, but it's going to combine at that point with the coronal mass ejection here. Now this is showing it start to impact, and a good average would be at midnight tonight, and that's showing 0 hours on the 15th. But that's UTC time, so that means from about 7 p.m. tonight for East Coast time in the United States, for about until midnight, we need to watch this. One thing about it, they have a plus or minus 7 hours on as far as time of uncertainty of arrival on both models, this one and the one before it. Now, this one, it shows a few different things. Notice at the top, you've got the code, and it's got the Earth in the yellow dot. The Sun, of course, is in the center white. Then Mars is the red, Mercury, Venus. Then you have satellites, Maven, Spitzer, Stereo, A and B, and it shows their locations on this map. stereo A and B, and the blue and red squares are on the back side of the sun, and we're just now getting stereo A images that are clear enough to see because they were both behind the sun and were being blocked. Now, Mars looks like a diamond, but that's because that MAVEN satellite is parked around it. Remember, it arrived at the same time Comet Sighting Spring came through there in that big ball of energy that appeared, and they cut the feed. That cost me a copyright strike to put that on YouTube, and I had to take it down. But I think I'm going to put it back up, and I'll put it on the website, bpearthwatch.com. I'll let you guys know when I have time to do that. But looking at our earthquakes, then that's important because the Earth has been shaking a lot lately, and the plates seem to be stressed. We've been watching the Cascadia subduction zone, and what we've had is a 4.8 in the Aleutian Trench today. But you also had the 5.8 guys in Christchurch, New Zealand, down at the bottom here. If you've seen the videos of that, you see the cars shaking, and there's cliffs falling into the ocean. I don't think anybody was hurt but there was a lot of activity. But remember, Christchurch got hit a few years ago, and it was very devastating to them there. But we need to watch the quakes tonight. Again, East Coast time, the models are showing at about 7 p.m. Again, that could be 7 hours later. I've seen them more times than not be on the upside of the plus on the 7 hours. In other words, a little later than normal. We'll watch that and see. But this is a heads up, guys. I'm almost through with part 2 of the video from yesterday about the missing children and the organ harvesting. It is probably more than you want to know. It'll be up today. Heads up, be safe.